Welcome to Horror Movies and Beyond. Today, I'm joined by director David A. Roberts to discuss his psychological horror thriller, Older Gods. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking to you about this.
This film was very interesting, and I kind of want to take a different route. And this is the first time. So this is the first for everything. I wanted to take a different route because I wanted to talk about some things that I noticed that this film has a common theme for throughout the film, which is guilt.
Yeah.
And it's something about that because you don't see that in horror films often, where they really deep dive into how it is to feel guilt and to see the stages of that. And I kind of want to dissect that a little bit. This film is about after the discovery of his troubled friend, Chris Rivers travels to a remote Welsh countryside to investigate what happened, leading him to a discovery of a dark cult. And that is interesting in itself. But before we get really started, I just want to say great landscaping location. I mean, I love how that looks. And talk a little bit about that. How did you discover, like, this is what I want and this is what I want the story to kind of base? Because it was a really felt like isolation, like this big world in this little, well, it was a big moment, but he felt kind of like confined because there's no one to talk to him or believe him.
Well, it was during the pandemic, so we had to find somewhere which wasn't just in the middle of nowhere for the case of filming the story. It was actually, we had to find somewhere which was kind of a bubble for the crew, because that creepy cottage, all the crew stayed there while we were filming it, so you can only have X amount of crew, and you kind of going a bit crazy while you're there with nothing else, because you had no phone signal there, it didn't have drinking water, which was very strange to us. It's kind of like how the taps was like brown water. The nearest town was miles away. We filmed it on the hottest week of the year, so getting water there was a nightmare. But in terms of visually, you couldn't get any better, because it was there's an area in the UK called Snowdonia, which is a large mountain range, and there's all these little farms and pockets of life which are in the middle of nowhere, where even if you think you're from a relatively small town like myself when I grew up, there are still places you can go where there's literally the middle of nowhere where it never goes wrong. So it's kind of, if like the electricity went out there, we would have been in problem, and that would have been a nightmare-inducing experience by itself. But it took a long time to find the right place. So it wasn't just the visually, but the practicalities of filming during the pandemic, of having somewhere we can have it. It was between lockdowns, so it wasn't actually, in the UK there was like a gap between two. So we did it in the middle of that, and then when we got back, strangely enough, there's another one. So it took weeks to find somewhere, but not months. So it was quite lucky. As soon as we did a location scout, you could just tell straight away that, oh, this is the place.
It was beautiful, but also it was creepy because, things were happening throughout the film, and, in the fields and the birds and him in the woods. I mean, there were so many things, but it was still bigger than what we are seeing. Another thing is the opening. I think it really places you of how scary or creepy or what's really going to happen and how it began. Like it did three elements, which was this burning that was going on, the blood sacrifice, and then you can hear the transformation, and then it goes right in. So we already in the middle of chaos of what's going to be happening, and it just didn't like stretch out what we're going to be seeing. Like we already there. We're just going to see Chris develop in his own madness and develop in trying to figure out what happened to his friend and stuff like that. So yeah, I like that.
Thanks very much. So the opening was supposed to just throw you off balance. So because it's obviously a bit of a slow burn film. It's not jump scares every 10 seconds. So we need to give you this fear or dread of something terrible is going to happen. So if you start the film with because through the credits you see little sights of it's kind of a sacrifice, and who are these guys and why are they doing it, where are they, and then you all of a sudden turn to the opening shot of this cottage in the middle of nowhere. It buys you some time, shall we say, for the beginning of the film to realize I need to know what that was about. And as you, it's a mystery. That's all we wanted a part of, because a lot of decisions are made by budget and things like that when it comes to the story. But at the end of the day, you don't want until right at the end to know, what is this? Who is this cult? Is it real what's happening to him, or is he kind of losing his mind? Or
yeah, you're right. It was exactly a mystery, because you had three things was happening, three major things happened in that scene, and then you were just like, well, man, okay, all right, so we're going to be seeing some crazy stuff. Okay, let's go. So that's how it felt.
So the word that we were going with was unsettling, rather than scary. It's unsettling. So when I was sitting with Gerald Buckfield, who I think did a really great score, and there's kind of a creepy, and that adds to a lot of it. It's that we want some unsettling sounds. We want sub bass, which kind of makes you feel like it's a heartbeat, or the rattle of a bass in a speaker makes you feel strange. You know, so the atmospheres, it was unsettling. So that opening, you knew, because it's like, you're watching a horror film at the end of the day. You know something's going to go bad. But we just wanted that little unsettling mystery of, well, I know that's going to be revealed later on, so how do we get there? So hopefully that keeps you interested until then, should we say.
Exactly. So we meet Keith. Why did I say Keith? Chris. We meet Chris. And, there was really something very important about Chris, because he left his pregnant wife and she's about to have the baby at any moment, and his friend was calling like, hey, what are you doing? What's really going on? And he went to this countryside to figure out what happened to his friend Billy. Now, you would have to be going through something to leave a part of you, your wife, that is like worried sick, she's about to give birth, and how guilty do you have to be, and why would he do it? And I think it's very important, because we're at the point of where he becomes consumed about something he did or didn't do, and guilt plays a big part. And I really, when I watched it twice, and I was like, well, why would he do that? And that's what I was getting out of that, because we're going to see his deep dive into the depths of his feeling, and we're seeing it at that moment. So before he even left, before we see him there or what was going on, he was already spiraling down already. So we're seeing his story at the end of his spiral, and we're getting his 3 acts of trying to figure out what the hell happened to his friend. That's pretty cool.
That's spot on. So you got it exactly. So we don't make rational decisions because of guilt. Guilt pushes us to do stuff we won't do. So the whole film is about what we're willing to do to make up for this guilt. So the guilt of not being there, survivor guilt is a very real and horrible thing of something happened to somebody you close to or you loved, and there was nothing you could do about it. And there's the guilt of not being there, and if I was only there, I could have done this, or maybe you make a scenario in your mind. So it's kind of like, what? That's it, because there's questions you can ask through the films, like, why doesn't he just go home? Why is he still there? Because he hasn't resolved anything. As you say, why did he leave his wife to come and see this? So it'd be because he wasn't thinking rationally. He's desperate. He's desperate to do anything to make up for not being there. And it's also somebody who, ever since they were kids, he's been the protector, or the one that has actually always had an arm around him through his life. And it's got to a point where we all grow apart a little bit as we get older, but if you found out in the film, this Billy's starting to say some strange things. He's investigating some strange things. So eventually you start thinking, oh, that old friend of mine is talking very strange. I've got a family now. I need to distance, and then by doing that and something bad happens is guilt. Oh, well, I should have done that. I could have done my family and looked after him. And you're not going to act rationally, and you're not going to act normal. You're not going to make very good decisions while you do that, basically, you know.
Another thing I was getting off of that, not only was he had, you know, that sense of maybe anger or resentment towards Billy, I think it was his wife as well, because this is what I was getting, because, you know, he had his life. He, you know, he has a job, he has a family, expecting a baby, and he ended up leaving his best friend behind in some way. And his friend was going through his mental issues, and he wasn't where he needed to be. And it's like, we'll push him away. And he fell in love and have this family. And to leave her, it was like, because of you, because I went on to have this seemingly perfect life, I left my friend behind. So not only was that guilt eating him away that he decided to leave and go check out his friend, it was like almost like it's your fault. This whole life, you know, that I really wanted, and leaving my friend behind. Now he's gone, you know, and I could have been there. But that is not her fault. I think it's the whole thing. I think obviously Billy was going through some mental issues and stuff like that, but I also think it was kind of Chris's fault too, because no one told him to ignore your friend. You know, you were pushing your friend.
I'd say it's absolutely Chris's fault. Well, he'd be, I think, you know, what do they call it, the steps, or the 12 levels of what's it called, you know, when he's like, one is acceptance, and then one is you get angry, and one is but I think when you would maybe start deflecting, wouldn't you, in terms of, well, if it wasn't for this life, that it's not that he's blaming her or anything, it's just more, you're part of the thing which I chose over this person who needed my help. And there's a little scene which always makes me laugh where do you know, there's a scene where another friend of his basically calls him up and says, "Where are you? You've left her. She's pregnant. What are you doing, you idiot?" And he's like, I know. I'll be back. And a lot of, in reviews, and a lot of kind of hate that character for being, why are you not a friend to him? But everything that guy says is completely right. You've left a pregnant woman by herself. You've just dropped everything. She's got to deal with everything. Why have you done? So it's kind of like people thinking that guy's a bad guy for moaning at his friend. It's like, no, that guy's completely right. And I'd like to think that if one of my friends who has a wife and a baby just gets out of there, I'd be furious at him. So it's kind of like a strange. And I think Chris, once he arrives there in Wales, far from home, I think that's when it hits him, where it's like, oh, this is me. But as this is all down to me. But while I'm here, I've got to make sure it wasn't just a wasted journey. I've got to make sure that I do this and then get back to, because he is trying to he's trying to do that thing of solve everything quickly so he can get back. He's not kind of abandoning her, never wants to go back. It's I just need to do this. Just give me a few days to try and fix this problem and see if his family is okay, and then I'll get back to the family, and probably get a hell of a shouting at, but it won't take. You know, I can get back quickly. And then the more he kind of goes down the downward spiral, it's getting harder and harder to leave.
But it's also important to know that Billy did try to reach out to people.
Yeah,
I mean, that was important to know, because even though he was going through these things and going through his, you know, dark place, he went somewhere to understand his dark place and end up taking him even further to where he, I mean, couldn't get out. It was just like, you know, I mean, many of us have been in a dark place. Some of us didn't make it out, and some of us, you know, got therapy and help. And I feel like it was kind of a metaphor of that throughout the entire film.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, with it, as you think of him shouting to his friend, you would start off just you'd sound less crazy, But the more you're ignored, and you're trying to get messages to say you need some help, the more desperate you become when you're asking for help. The more desperate you become, the more crazy you sound, and the more everybody steps back. So it's a little bit of that. So, and that is why Chris realizes that, and why he becomes so guilty, because my friend wasn't crazy. His friend desperately needed help, and he was stepping back. So that's why something just breaks that he can't control, and he's got to go and try and fix it. And that's. But you're very right in terms of the analogy, shall we say, in terms of shouting for help, and not everybody's there to help at the end of it. And what do you sound like when you're saying something? If something is very strange and very wrong, it takes a very decent type of person to just believe everything you say straight away and assume what that very crazy sounding stuff you're talking about is actually might be happening.
A little bit that I wanted to talk about is the Lovecraft of it. I love one of the scenes where Chris is like, he becomes into the dark place. I mean, he has, the markings, and it's like it's just horrifically horrible for him at this point. And he's trying to get out. Landscape of seeing whatever is manifesting around him and the tentacles and all this stuff. It was just like, I wish I could have saw it like on a big screen, because it was just like, man, I would love to have seen it on a big screen. But Older Gods, I mean, you call the film Older Gods, but it does have this cosmic being. Older Gods is the most oldest gods, and when I read it up a little bit about the inspiration for this, it's a protector of humans while still being evil. So
that's a good way.
That was when I was reading and had like the deities underneath. I was like, wait a minute, that makes sense, because I've watched a few films with those cosmic beings or theme, and then you think about it, it's like, wait a minute, there is some truth to that, because how you look at it. That's why Lovecraft is very interesting. Their themes is always, this is what I get out of it: self-hatred, guilt, fear, self-indulgence in like this narcissistic way. It seems like the cosmic beings are to show you the world is bigger than you, and you're nothing but a fly caught in a web of lies, fear, and ignorance, intertwined into like madness and insanity.
No, you're right. So
it's like weird.
So we were looking at the other day, and he was saying that cosmic horror, because that's what I suppose you have Lovecraftian and cosmic horror seem to be the same kind of genre. But cosmic horror is the fear of the unknown. So there's not a monster, there's not a ghost, there's not a psychopath. There's something out there which you don't understand, which to me is kind of scarier. If there's a psycho, I might be faster than him if I don't get cornered and I don't go upstairs like everybody else does in films like this one. So it's the case of, and how the idea for the story started was, I heard about this phenomenon where if certain people just really get incredibly focused and can't concentrate on anything else, when they think about how small they are in the grand scale of existence, how we are sands on the on the beach of the universe or something like that, where the more you focus on that, the more you and the more you can't focus on anything else. So that's kind of where it comes from. But that is quite what's the word? You see that in a lot of Lovecraft stories as well. So it's and obviously it's obviously very influenced by. I'm honestly not a massive fan of the books in terms of but the concepts and the ideas are very good. So it's but it was really about that. We're all terrified of. Do we mean anything? Are we so small and insignificant? I don't know about you, that's terrifying to me. So it's kind of that's what the whole story was based around. So it's kind of from that idea moved to maybe there was a cult that kind of this was nothing but all they focused on. Okay, so how can we who's the person that would deal with them. So he can say somebody who was sent to investigate them, something bad happens to them, and that's kind of how the story unfolded, shall we say, and how was the easiest to write it. But it's all started from that fear of the unknown, which the fear of the universe, and not knowing what's out there. So if something's there, so calling it older gods is excuse me. But if we were around and we've got a god and everything like that, if you believe in that kind of thing, it's like, what's older than that person? So that might send people a bit crazy when they think about it too much as well. Do you know what
I mean? Another thing, like I said, it does have that theme of guilt, like where it's kind of the focal point, but then it kind of spirals into, levels within it. And so it was like, how far would you go to get relief of that pain of not being there for someone that meant everything for you?
Because something similar happened to me, which kind of knocked off the story, which was not similar at all. I mean, in terms of during COVID, a friend of mine was very sick, not of COVID, and they passed away during it. But they told me the day before that I would do a video call with them before they passed. No, I was going to see them, sorry. And then they said, don't worry, we'll do a video call tomorrow instead, because you can't come in because of COVID rules and things like that. And then it came to the point where he actually passed away before I got a chance to talk to him. So in a strange way, you start thinking, I felt guilty that I didn't get a chance to say things you should have said to somebody, even though it was no fault of mine. Do you see what I mean? You do become a bit, oh, if only I would have done, and I just would, maybe if I just would have gone anyway, or if somebody could give me a phone to him on the day rather than saying do it. But then you start blaming other people. There's this weird selfish thing of it's my fault, even though it wasn't. So if you, amplify that into a story like this, and that was another thing about in terms of like the guilt part, is in terms of what we're doing to get up, to get over the guilt. Is he doing that to be selfish, to make himself feel better? Or is he actually doing it in the hope that his friend can see him somehow, or everybody knows that they helped? Do you see what I mean? So it's kind of, and I think especially at the beginning of the film, I don't know which side Chris feels.
That's why I think the birds are important. I'm not going to give that part away, but when Chris sees the birds, it represents him spiraling. But then you see that bird again, and I feel like how can I say this? I feel like it's at a point where you are there and you can't get away as easily as you think you can, because you now have demons. You now have something. So I think it was a reminder of who you are and what you have to face.
Yeah, and I think you exactly. So there's, just by doing that one thing doesn't make you go, oh, everything's fine now. If you even if you did the thing that this person about asked you to do and you did it well, and you don't sit back and go, oh, everything's great. Is the fact that even if you got to a certain point, you realize that's not the answer, that's not the end, that's not how I feel, and you've put that perfectly, really, in terms of it's a little reminder that he thinks everything might be okay, but why would it be?
Just like that, right? After what we went through with him, it's like, no,
yeah.
No,
it's not just gonna go. You can say you're pulling the rug from under them a little bit, where he's feeling, he wakes up, he's feeling a bit better, he talks to his wife again, and then you see certain things. It's kind of, but it's a little reminder for him, which is we're not finished yet. You got a long way to go.
Yeah, that's scary, because now he got to deal with what's really going on. This film is so it really got my emotions as it was revealing, because I mean, I felt like I didn't go through what he went through, but I think at some point we've all had that feeling of man, I could have done this differently, or if I should have been there, or you probably Billy, where it was like, why nobody there for me? And then you get to that point, or someone who went down that, that way and everything, and no longer here. I mean, it's just, it's life in a terrible type of way, but
big or small, it's something. Obviously this film is dramatic in terms of something huge happens. There's little things that stops you reaching your goals, isn't it? Or stops you feeling bad that you don't deserve something, or not. Just it happens to the best of us. So I think that's why it's a bit of a universal story.
Yeah. So where can people find this film and watch it?
So it's on Amazon Prime, it's on Apple TV to rent and purchase, it's on Tubi, so you can watch it for free on Tubi. That's where I usually nudge people towards if it's free to watch, if you got. And it's in a bunch of film festivals coming up as well. So it will be in more platforms that are coming soon, but end of the day, I was not nudging towards those three places anyway: Amazon, Apple, or Tubi if you want to watch it for free.
Well, I want to say thank you so much for joining me on this conversation, because it needed to be talked about. Like I said, I wanted to look at this a different way, because I feel like it's a topic that's not focused on or elevated or anything, especially when you're watching a type of horror film. It's like, okay, these people do this or this person do that, but can we talk about that point of where you put yourself in a situation because you felt guilty about something, and you create this world bigger than you, and it just brings you down. I mean, to the to the worst way.
I'm so sorry. No, but
it is true.
I really appreciate you saying that, because at the end of the day, we could do, and I'm a fan of slasher horror and the typical, but at the end of the day, we wanted to do something which was kind of like it or hate it, just think about it afterwards, talk about it. So that's what we want. So at the end of the day, if it got you thinking and it made you think if what life's like and things like that, that's a win in my column, in terms of, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. So everybody out there, please check this film out, or all the platforms that he said, and I will put links on some of them down below. And it is a great film, and congratulations on this. So thank you so much for joining me, and you have a wonderful day. Bye. Thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, and enjoy my other videos on my channel.